What a week it has been in the iGaming industry here. Lots of news coming out, lots of movements, lots of things happening, and it will be interesting to have this discussion today around one of the especially more interesting news. Obviously, that Evolution has acquired Big Time Gaming at a valuation of 450 million euro. But before we jump into that topic a little bit, let's talk a little bit about what else have happened in the industry this week. Nico, what have you noted down this week in the industry?
Yeah, so first of all, welcome each and everyone to a nice chat again, seeing a lot of familiar faces in the audience. The audience already filling up. So what we've seen last week or in between the last Clubhouse chat we had, first of all, DraftKings secured their market access in Arizona with expanding their PGA Tour deal. Why is this important? Because in Arizona, the Senate already passed a House bill which will allow sports wagering at tribal casinos and sites owned by major league sports team and professional sports organization. So as the DraftKings just signed the deal with the PGA Tour, they are able to actually offer wagering at PGA locations. What we've seen as well is the long wait within the betting retail shops in the UK is over as they reopened in the UK. So roughly around 6,000 retail shops are opened up again. So getting to one of the topics with M&A, Pierre, do you want to guide us through some plans of a Stockholm-based company?
Yes, I certainly can, Nico. Very interesting. So good friends of ours over at Trustly. You can even see the little logo next to my head here in my profile picture, actually. They have just announced their IPO on the Swedish stock exchange, and Trustly have really made a really rocket trajectory in their valuations because only in 2018, when Nordic Capital acquired 70% of the shares in Trustly, they were valued at 700 million euro. And the IPO that is announced just the other day, they are bringing Trustly to market at a valuation of now of 9 billion euro. Much of that can be obviously attributed to their merger with Pay with My Bank in 2019, but still going from 700 million euro valuation in 2018 to 9 billion today is obviously quite interesting, and just again tells the story of how crazy the markets are right now, favoring digital services and digital products. So, Nico, anything else on your end as well?
Yes, on my end, so we're seeing some legal updates with respect to loot boxes. While loot boxes are already regulated in Belgium and the Netherlands and considered as gaming or gambling, also in Brazil, the authorities are investigating of loot boxes and how to consider loot boxes and all the revenues attached to the loot boxes. So this is something we've seen from a legal perspective as well. And there's a casino update as well. Karolina, do you want to update us on the Karolina, not on the Karolina, of course, on the Karolina as well, but on the casino front as well?
Yeah, I think it was interesting to see that the Bally, who just recently completed the deal considerations with games, is they've also been on the shopping spree and announced that they're going to buy Tropicana in Las Vegas for, I think, something above 300 million. So it's interesting to see them making so many moves. They already own 11 casinos in various jurisdictions, and they're planning to have 15 by the time they complete the acquisition. So I think they're really moving, closing in on becoming a recognizable and strong player in the market. So very interesting in that aspect. In terms of big time gaming and things that we're going to talk about. We might have Nik popping in and giving his commentary. He's double booked, so he just Skyped me that he might show up towards the end of the session. So if we could maybe extend it today by 15 minutes to give him a chance to contribute and for you guys to listen to him, I think Pierre would be nice because he can't come until like 9:50.
Yeah, absolutely. If we can get Nik Robinson in the room, we'll definitely extend the time a little bit today. We stretch it a little bit. So yeah, fingers crossed that he'll be able to join. But obviously, he's obviously a busy man. So let's see if we get lucky today. So as a little introduction today, again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the iGaming Breakfast Chat here on the Thursday mornings on Clubhouse. Today we are discussing the Evolution acquisition of Big Time Gaming that was announced earlier in the week. And it was a very interesting acquisition that announced at maximum valuation of 450 million euro. And very interesting details in this deal. I had the pleasure of kind of bringing on Julian, who's here on the on stage today as well for an emergency podcast earlier in the week, and we kind of analyzed the deal a little bit together. But it's really nice to have Julian here today again as a guest speaker to discuss the deal a little bit more in detail, what it means. Also, is it good? Is it bad for the industry? I think there's a lot of details to mention there as well that we did not talk about in the podcast on Monday. So nice to have you here, Julian.
Hi guys.
And good morning. And also to you guys in the audience, if you would like to come on stage, if you have any questions, if you have any input, any comments, any opinions, just feel free to put up your hand and we will invite you here up on stage as well. Also, I can see that our good friend Tim is here on stage today again. So good morning to you as well, Tim.
Morning, Pierre. Morning, Karolina, Nico, and Julian. Good to be here. And yes, it was an interesting week in M&A in the industry. And the question I've got is, how big will Evolution actually become? And are they usurping all the American money buying up things at the moment? Is Evolution actually taking the pole position by quickly wrapping up all the investments and creating the full circle of different iGaming products, and will then sort of take that to the American market themselves, and everyone goes, "Wow, where did that come from?" So it's certainly an interesting time and interesting play from the team at Evolution. And the funny one I read was that Todd was very close to. They had their roadmap with some games about to be launched, within 2 weeks, and been through QA, and the games being built for 8 months, and he's just torn up the whole roadmap and said, "No, me and Nik will do it this way now, and this is where we see the future of Evolution." And apparently some interesting conversations around the conference table, but the product guys won, and they're going to take a very interesting roadmap of the giant called Evolution forward now these days.
Yeah, very interesting, Tim. There's so many different dynamics at play here because on the one hand, it's like, yes, it's a great acquisition by Evolution, kind of buying revenue and a very healthy financial company in Big Time Gaming. But it's also the fact that, like, just what you were mentioning, Tim, on the product side of things, Todd obviously have an extremely strong reputation in the industry as being a very strong leader and driver into Evolution's product roadmap. At the same time, Big Time Gaming has the cult status Nik Robinson in the organization, who similarly have a similar status as Todd. And now, as they are joining forces, another question here is: does 1 + 1 = 3, or does 1 + 1 = 0? Can this be? Can this be something that becomes something really great, or can it, can they cancel out each other? That's another question as well.
Well, that's why there's an earnout, I guess.
hence the earnout. That's a good point, Julian. So I mean, but I'd like to start off a little bit today. So for now on stage, Julian, obviously you're an M&A expert here, having led and managed M&As in excess of more than 500 million euro. Tim, at the same time, you're obviously CEO and co-founder of iGaming Group, an operator. So I'd like to start a little bit on the operator side here, because I heard some voices here as well, Tim, from operator side, that there is a little bit of a concern that Evolution is now going to start driving up prices, and obviously they now have a lot of bargaining power going to the operators since they are carrying both NetEnt, Red Tiger, Evolution, and now BTG, that you kind of are handcuffed to work with Evolution, and hence they will kind of take that as an opportunity to drive up the prices. Do you have any thoughts on that, Tim? And is that something you have been faced with in Congaming so far?
So let's rewind history when there was Playtech and Microgaming as the big casino suppliers. Microgaming used to simply send out their casino suite, and you could not have any other suppliers at all. So I think 32 Red for many years was only Microgaming product and using their full suite and back-end tools and whatnot. They built Quickfire as a way of sort of trying to open up more market share, but there was always an understanding from the Isle of Man office of MG that Quickfire would do nothing, and it would still be the full product suite, which is the big upfront purchase and the 15% rev share and whatnot. Quickfire, within 1 or 2 years, overtook the GGR. And look, these are some rough numbers, so if they're up from Microgaming, feel free to correct me on the numbers. But as I understand, Quickfire overtook that sort of single suite of product. Now, Playtech, as we all know, were also very aggressive in their strategy of wanting positioning on sites and ensuring that it was only Playtech content going out. Fundamentally, in my opinion, this is a big problem, because at the end of the day, it's up to the player what they want to play, and not try to force feed games down a player's throat that they might not want to play it, because again, it's so easy to click to a different casino and get the content from somewhere else. So looking at history, this model of trying to monopolize what an operator can use is flawed and won't work in the long term.
Agreed.
If we can keep, or if Evolution can keep a certain, nearly a silo or a wall between the NetEnt, the Red Tiger, the big time gaming, and other products that other suppliers will be building, they will have the leverage to push up their deals and renegotiate contracts. I've always found Evolution to be an absolute pleasure to deal with, to be very commercially fair in trying to build their product. It then just might become a little bit of a concern that if you're a new operator coming to the market, there will be a higher price to collect the suite of products you have. And it's an interesting poker game between operator and supplier. Who needs to have who, and how does that affect your negotiation on your different percentages on the different products? But yes, Evolution are growing bigger, and their chip stack at the poker table is getting much, much bigger, which puts the advantage into their pockets to squeeze. But will they go as bad as a Playtech or a Microgaming did, as they did back in the day? So, don't know.
I spoke, maybe just to add to this, I mean, obviously there will be no promises made, but I spoke to one of the senior guys from Net and Red Tiger about exactly that. And they mentioned that the overall plans and ambitions of the company is to stay on that friendly and fair side, because if they were starting to do the shark deals where they really utilize the leverage, they would do exactly what people are afraid of and are scared of. So I don't think it's the right time. It would definitely come with long-term commercial advantages if they did, because I heard voices in the past that said NetEnt should have gone exclusivity clauses all over when they owned 60-70% of the market, because they wouldn't see the downfall otherwise, but they didn't. So I don't think they will go that way, because there's a lot of people already questioning whether this is not challenging, not just for operators, but also for newcomers to the market on a provider side, because no one can match the scale that they have and the ability to offer low sort of rev share deals, because they will always make it up on the scale that they have, right? So I think it makes it challenging for everyone outside of the excitement that comes from new product opportunities that will come out.
That said, which operator these days can afford to not have Evolution's live dealer product? I mean, they are by far the clear number one supplier of live dealer. I know their Asian business took a while to get going, but it's actually very substantial now. I know that what they're doing in America is becoming very substantial as well. The question is, will they, around that board table, now say, if you want Evolution Live Dealer, like everyone does, you now must have NetEnt and now must have Red Tiger, and try and squeeze operators in that way. Now, the difference here is that big time gaming, it's just perpetual revenue coming in, and that's what Evolution's bought. So, you know, MegaWays is, I think, in 200 different games across multiple suppliers and vendors. So I don't see that sort of anti-competitiveness coming in through the purchase of big time gaming. But yeah,
I actually think it's beneficial in the short term. Let's be clear. When you get consolidations like this, the first thing you do is you remove fragmentation, right? And as Tim said, and I wholeheartedly agree, Evolution is a really good partner to deal with, right? You see this across the whole supply chain. People generally agree that Evolution is a very good partner to deal with, especially if you mentioned when you compare it with some names in the past. I guess the challenge then becomes, once you do own most of the chip stack, right? How does your relationship change with the operators, right? And I think that's a dynamic that will start to play out in the next 2 to 3 years, right? Once you start seeing the cheat sheets and the different pricings align, and then you start to see pressures from the operators wanting specific types of product, like Live Casino, for instance. That is when market dynamics enter into account. The good news is there's still a lot of reasonably good small to medium independent vendors out there. So at least as of now, in mid-2021, an operator still has of products to choose from, but that's going to consolidate in the next 2 to 3 years, right? Which obviously makes jobs like mine very interesting, because I get end up selling a lot of much more businesses. But I am concerned in the medium term, right? What happens when this dries up and all we have is 2 or 3 behemoths just selling the same content, which is what happened in other industries.
Do you think that there is a risk for this to happen, Tim, to the point where there are a couple of studios that consolidate and we go back to the old days of just having 1 or 2 or 3 providers?
If it does, it actually opens up a door for new suppliers and people who have been in those so let's say the Studio X gets acquired by conglomerate Y. You've got people who are sort of the second and third rung, who are the creative people in those studios. They will go off and start building their own content studios. They'll come to someone like Yolo for a bit of seed capital and know-how, and it will open up the door. You know, if you remove competition, new competition will arrive with new thoughts and new creativity. So that's just a cyclical effect of what happens here. And the question is, can the Evolution conglomerate, can they continue innovating in terms of their content provision? Because we all know NetEnt dropped the ball in terms of their market share and their innovation and their time. I think there was 8 months for NetEnt to get a game from scratch to operator site. So a huge amount of time. We know on average in our benchmarks, it's about 6 to 8 weeks for a slot company to get a game to market. So with that sort of oil tanker mentality, it becomes hard and slows things down and creates openings for new innovative companies to come to the market when those competitive voids have been snapped up and consolidated.
I think the super interesting aspect of this deal is what's going to happen with the franchising or licensing of the MegaWays. And I think that's been a big talk for suppliers as well. It's a big money machine, obviously, for big time gaming, the licensing of MegaWays. And we see this deployed on pretty much every slot studio out there. But I think when it comes to live dealer, we will see that restricted or exclusive to Evolution, and it gives an amazing advantage, because when it comes to all the other innovations that Todd comes out with game shows and all the really great game concepts, they don't have such a long leadway ahead of other games when Playtech or other operators come up with a similar product. So they don't have the time to get engraved into player sort of recognition and have that uniqueness. So then when Playtech comes out with a similar product, the competitive advantage of Evolution isn't as big. However, with MegaWays being around for this long, and generally some of the other concepts within games being so highly recognized in the market space, having that exclusive and deployed in a really creative way to live dealer games, I think that's what they referred to as the iPod type of moment. I really think that's one of the most exciting things from creating competitive advantage, and also from seeing innovation come out in the next 12, 18 months.
So, Karolina, you're saying then that one of the reasons Evolution's bought MegaWays is to incorporate it into their live dealer product, which will stop certain live dealers, maybe who start with the name P, copying what they're doing without Evolution, the ability. They can trademark a crazy time, but they can't trademark the intention behind the game. You
Absolutely.
now put MegaWays into one of those game show type things, and you own the IP of MegaWays that no one else can copy it. Then potentially that creates a competitive advantage, and maybe that's one of the key anchors behind the deal, or sort of behind what Todd's thinking.
Absolutely think so, because it's not just that lighting roulette, I'm sure it's patented and IP trademarked, right? But you cannot IP protect a methodology of the game. You can only protect the mechanics plus the name, right? So if Playtech comes up with quantum roulette and it's slightly different, then no one can stop them. The difference when you buy a well-established mechanic and trademark is that it's already sort of the king of IP. So even if Playtech did come up with MegaPace or I don't know, some sort of, that's a wrong word, but a different name and a similar game, is going to be miles behind the recognition that the MegaWays roulette, let's say, would have with the players. So I think it's a big anchor for the deal.
Well, I think it goes back though to Tim's point. At some stage, there's going to be so much clones of products, whether they bypass IP and legislation or not. Actually, it's one more for the patent lawyers than anything else. But it will force innovation, right? And we saw this on the affiliate network side, right? At some point, affiliates realized that they couldn't use the same streams to generate revenue, so new affiliate revenue streams, such as streamers themselves, are starting to emerge. I genuinely think we will start to see some new products that actually will start to become more innovative from the smaller studios, which then become acquired by the evolutions, right? So we're going to see the cyclical thing. But what is for sure is that the bigger the evolutions of the world become, the less able they are to innovate on their own steam unless they go down the acquisition route, if that makes sense.
Makes sense, Julian. Just to reset the room a little bit here, welcome to the iGaming Expert First chat. We are discussing Evolution's acquisition of Big Time Gaming this morning. Very exciting stuff, a lot of dynamics, a lot of different perspectives in this deal, so that's worth mentioning. And Robert, welcome to the stage. Do you have any questions, input, comments, anything?
Yeah, welcome. Good morning. It's crazy, right? Everybody knew BTG. I didn't know it that well. I didn't know it only had 11 employees. And the EBITDA margin is anybody ever going to beat such an EBITDA margin again? It's absolutely fantastic. It's crazy. I didn't see this coming. Certainly not that price. Certainly they were doing really, really, really well. But who knows, the details except them. Maybe you can look things up, but there's always a few years behind. And like Tim was saying, there's other suppliers coming up. We are a new supplier, so for us, I felt that it's good news for us as a small supplier, because immediately, like the last 2 weeks, conversation with operators have turned around a little bit, in the sense, well, selfishly, the operators now want to work with smaller studios a lot more, because power concentrated with one company is not the best news always in terms of negotiations for operators. So I think it's going to be exciting to see what's the next wave. Certainly a new time sort of has come to a degree, I think. What the next wave of suppliers, will produce, how they will provide a competitive edge, as Karolina is saying. So I think it's really, really exciting. I think suppliers were, for me at least, when I look I'm in the industry for 20 years, there's sort of different waves. In the last few years where, there were things brewing up, and now we see the results with all these acquisitions. But to a degree, it was a little bit boring to look at the suppliers 5, 6, 7 years ago. It's more of the same, and everybody's growing. But people grow silently. Typically, they don't. When people grow, they're silent. They don't do a lot of PR, and suddenly you have this big bang of exits, of new excitements actually. And it's probably also inspirational for existing suppliers and new suppliers to say, wow, this is interesting. There's this big acquisition volumes out there, which we haven't seen for a long time, I think, at least with, let's say, single vertical suppliers, like something rather, simple, let's say, as a slot. So it's a very exciting time, I think.
I have a question from the audience through one of the back channels here, and I wanted to add it to my own comment because we talked about it on some other forum in the past, that I totally see Evolution being able to become a market leader when it comes to PAM provision in the US if they went down that route, because they've got all the key elements apart of PAM, but I mean, they can buy one. I'm also quite confident that we will see sportsbook acquisition at some point, because increasingly I feel they really understand that need to incorporate products holistically rather than having to fight with some proprietary sportsbook with inability to launch a live roulette from their sportsbook site. If they cover all spectrum of products, they can really integrate them better and make this experience between live sports and slots much more seamless, which I think is the future, and it is what people will want. But if they were going to go as a PAM or an aggregator to the US, there's also a question of whether this acquisition introduces really big threat to other aggregators like Relax, like Scientific Games, because at the end of the day, big time gaming is a big revenue driver for all of these guys, and a big deal puller for operators. So if they decided to remove big time from these platforms and keep this exclusive to Evolution aggregation, Evolution PAM, that could be also really threatening to some key markets in the space. And I'm interested to know your views, whether from a commercial perspective, of a revenue generation perspective, it would make sense for them to remove them from different distribution channels.
That was for me or for Pierre, or I'm not sure, or anybody.
Anyone that feels they can answer.
Just a quick one, really. Again, I think it spells opportunity as well. If if a big revenue driver is removed from aggregators, well, a lot of small, hungry companies are going to come and try to fill the void. So again, I'm just very excited about it. So that's my point.
From an acquisition perspective, full stack is always more appealing to an acquisition in the US. And I strongly suspect this is actually one of Evolution's longer term plans. They will want to be bought by a private equity or even a SPAC, right? Which I suppose we'll probably delve into at some point on this talk today. So I think, to your point, Karolina, yes, I think that Evolution is very mindful of this. I think it is part of their acquisition strategy. And I think actually with the big time gaming, they're testing the waters to see how the markets respond to what is actually quite a light acquisition, which actually, spoiler alert, they responded quite well because the share price didn't change at all. But B, it actually readies them up to actually acquire more small players in this space and actually then prepare themselves for an even bigger acquisition, the likes of which we haven't yet seen in gaming.
Just a comment, actually, Julian, on what we discussed in the podcast on Monday, which was that the share price was lukewarm during the day. It didn't move up nor down. I actually got a comment, someone writing to me, an equity researcher who noted that on Monday on the news, while Evolution share price did not move, the general movements of the gaming industry was significantly down on the day. So, for example, DraftKings were down something like 7% on Monday, and other listed gaming companies were also down between 4 and 6%. So while Evolution's share did not go up or down, they still outperformed the general gaming industry that day. So perhaps that's an indication that it actually was a positive movement in comparison.
Correct. That's exactly what happened, actually. Now they've recovered a little bit since then, but the truth is the fact that they haven't moved is good for Evolution, and it also means that the market is ready to price in additional value at some point when the acquisition becomes more real. Once it's approved by regulators, once synergies of EBITDA starts to be acquired, and then share price goes up. What that means is that Evolution gets yet more buying power for which to trade its shares on a future acquisition that involves at least part of it in equity.
I think there's also oh, sorry, Tim. I just wanted to say that I think there's a the overall market understanding of the opportunities for product from this deal is probably small, because this is niche knowledge, niche expertise, what MegaWays could do to a live dealer, how Nik and Todd can cooperate. Once Evolution starts promoting that a bit more with sort of videos and insights, I think it will have a bigger impact, because from a commercial perspective, they only the current, I think, big time gaming revenue generation is what, 4% contribution towards Evo. So
yes, so there's two dynamics here, right? There's a short-term dynamic which will only be felt, as you correctly pointed out, by people in the gaming industry, or the VanEck funds of this world that actually just specialize in dedicated funds such as gaming, right? That's going to be short-term. People understand the supply chain, people understand the value chain, whether it's being throttled or not. So right now, the general perception is in gaming, oh wow, there's actually going to be some short-term consolidation at some point. The share prices will even out, but let's go long Evolution. But then there's a big macro environment for the hedge funds and the big players that don't understand gaming, but they understand profit and loss and price earnings dynamics. What they see is a behemoth that's about to become even bigger. So they will gradually start to buy up small equity stakes in the Evolutions of this world, because they know that Evolution itself would probably be primed at some stage for an even bigger acquisition, without even understanding or wanting to understand the underlying fundamentals of GGR and GR and TVs and EBITDA, if that makes sense.
Great. I have a different question. This from a different perspective. I mean, it seems that the panel all agrees that what Evolution is doing is they are strengthening their position massively in the market, and the acquisition of BTG is a great move by Evolution. That seems to be the consensus. This begs a little bit the question, what can stop Evolution Gaming? It seems that they are rather unstoppable at the moment. And I actually asked this question to Todd Hasselt, the CPO of Evolution Gaming, and I proposed, for example, what about if some rich kids in Silicon Valley decides that now they're going to innovate the live gaming space or the iGaming space as the US open up, and is going to kind of contribute to disruption. And first of all, Todd he kind of waved that off, saying that you can't just start a competitor to Evolution. You need thousands and thousands of dealers. You need the infrastructure. You need all of this. You need all of that. And secondly, he had a hard time to actually come up with the answer himself. What can disrupt Evolution Gaming? So I would like to just ask the panel, how, like, if you would have a devious plan to disrupt Evolution Gaming and start a competitor or invest into some other competitor that could disrupt Evolution, what is the devious plan to disrupt Evolution Gaming at this point? Is there such a thing?
So
yes.
I have. Sorry, Tim, go ahead first.
Yes, there is. It costs many millions of euros. It costs many hours of resources in development, many hours of software development. It requires an intricate knowledge of how to do streaming across different CDNs, across different continents. And it is a bloody hard thing to do. There's no guarantee that it will disrupt what Evolution is doing. And Todd was very right in his podcast that, even the fraud elements and the knowledge you build up over the 10 years Evolution have been live, learning how to do their fraud checks and their integrity checks of their gaming systems, it's difficult, and there are professionals out there who know how to do this, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. It's not like building a slot game for 30,000 euros. It's a multi-million-dollar play, and then you need to consider doing distribution, doing branding, and doing, trying to get the dominoes falling over as well. And it needs to be a very specific idea, which is solving a problem that Evolution are not looking into. So yes, difficult market and difficult vertical to jump into.
Wholeheartedly agree. And I'm going to use the oil tanker analogy again. It doesn't, you don't build an oil tanker in 3 months. It takes a much longer time for turnaround, and it's very hard to emulate, and it's very hard to get distribution and the relationships. However, the only player that can disrupt Evolution is Evolution itself. Evolution effectively is one or two bad acquisitions away from stumbling, and we saw this not just in gaming but in other industries. Right? If you bite off something bigger than you can chew, i.e., ingest reliably into your deal flow, or ingest reliably into your distribution channels, and it starts to eat away at your operational efficiency, then it's only a matter of time before other things start coming off the block. So it's, and I think actually this actually goes why Evolution is now looking at smaller pieces to acquire as opposed to bigger NetEnt-esque deals. Because if you can ingest something that rapidly contributes to your bottom line, not just your top line, and you can do it cheaply and reliably, and my goodness, would better do it with a company with 90% profit margin, right? You can do it more reliably down the line. But let's be clear, I genuinely think that Evolution's biggest challenge to growth is Evolution itself. So they have to be very clear and strategic about what they acquire down the line.
I agree with Julian, and I wanted to add that in terms of interest from what Julian mentioned, SPACs and sort of other parties from the US, it picked up massively. I do a lot of consulting for people interested in Evolution's defensibility and sort of barriers of entry for others. So I can only suspect what their goals of research are. And I think I don't do those calls anymore because I'm busy with my business, but I got 9 requests over the last 3 days from 9 different companies for exactly Evolution Gaming sort of defensibility call. So there's a lot of interest in the US for sure. To add what you said on the acquisitions, I think what is interesting with them that I think they understand where their weaknesses certainly are, because rather than trying, they definitely have resources to open their own studio and start making games, right? But they decide to keep their top sort of live dealer brain on live dealer and then complement that with other skill sets from well-performing companies, which I think at the moment is the right thing to do, because there's nothing that I would want to see less than Evolution opening up a slot studio themselves and venturing into games, because I just can't see it as being a great success, and it would divert their focus from live.
I agree with that. And I also would go one step further to say Evolution has stopped innovating, right? So the only way that Evolution can continue to grow, by grow actually means share price, is by acquiring. And through acquisition needs to be a very strategic, very laser pointed asset that is as yet undiscovered by the other buyers, and making sure that they can get to it first before everyone else does.
I disagree on the stop innovating. I'm following them closely and I see the results. And I mean, the game shows and those formats of games, yeah, I know that others have followed, and it's not a unique competitive in the market, but they were first. And those games for the first times are attracting completely different demographics. So you used to have very clear divide between live casino players and slots players, and the game shows, if they're positioned correctly, executed with the right campaign, they can rival some of the best performing slots on some of the big tier ones. So I would disagree that they stopped innovating. I think they're still at their height, and I think now even more exciting things are going to happen. So yeah,
it'd be interesting to see, to be honest with you. I've always seen that once a business grows beyond a certain threshold, its ability to incubate reliably and develop new product becomes hampered, not by its ability to do so, but by the cost effectiveness of it to do so. And maybe it comes down to a point where everyone's sitting in a boardroom saying, oh, we're going to invest X amount of man months to be able to do this, or shall we go and look to the market to do this? Honestly speaking, right now, history has always said that it's leaned more towards buying as opposed to building once you've reached a certain threshold. But I do agree with you. I agree with you that Evolution has actually had a reasonably good track record of innovating. I guess it stands to see whether they still see this as a financial incentive to continue doing so, if that makes sense.
So we have one guest in the stage. I'm not sure if he's going to want to come up on stage. I'll leave it to him, but I would like to hear, because I think this is one of the things that, at least knowing him personally, I know that he is looking for the product opportunities that's come out from this. So and I think this is what excites him. So maybe we can have a comment. I'm inviting him to speak, so let's see. Otherwise, you guys go ahead. But just to let you know, I'm trying to get Nik on the stage here.
Absolutely. Otherwise, I'm sure Nik is getting some really interesting comments and feedback here on his move recently. Tim, go ahead. Any comments from you?
I was just going back on Karolina's point before about what Evolution will do with big time gaming, and just sort of, will they cut it out, and will Evolution become an aggregator and a sole distributor? I think for Evolution to do that, they would need to go and acquire an aggregator themselves, because if you've got MegaWays in 30 different suppliers, you need to then obviously supply all their content as well. Therefore, I think the reason is they've bought the money, they've bought the perpetual revenue coming from that. I don't believe they will go and cut off their. I think there was only 2 distribution points, being Sire Games and Relax, of the big time BTG stable of games, but I don't see a reason why they would go and cut off that existing revenue through existing aggregators. And the more likely reason is the use of MegaWays within their live casino product. So yeah, just throwing some ideas around there on that point, Karolina, which I was thinking.
I agree with you. I don't think they would. I'm just saying that it would be, in my view, it would be smart if they kept some of the IP for the live dealer exclusively, because it really creates a big competitive advantage.
And look, on that, don't forget, obviously, microgaming are distributing BTG, and to some of their games are in the top 5 and top 10 top 10 games which are distributed through there. So I don't see any points why they would cut off existing revenue. I don't think that's what the play here is from Evolution. It's more that the live dealer. Can you imagine having MegaWays on roulette? And I've talked about this with the guys at One Touch, and just sort of dreaming about different game things. And you imagine you're playing roulette, and all of a sudden the roulette table starts expanding out like a MegaWays does. It could be quite unbelievable. And that's probably one of the ways it's going to be.
Yay! There's the man himself.
So yeah, thank you, Tim. First of all, that's a great comment on the expanding roulette into MegaWays using the mathematics would be interesting to see. Perhaps that is something Nik could expand on as well. Do you think that game mechanics could work for roulette as well? Nik, if you can hear us right now, you're just muted, just so that you're aware of that.
Yeah, let's carry on, because I think he's just.
There we go.
Sorry, I've just jumped out of a dinner to come. I'm actually very rudely at dinner with one AirPod in my left ear, listening in cheekily to everything that's going on. And I thought I'd just step out for 5 minutes and say hi, because yeah, the big question is, you start with the why, and the why is because for me, I can say quite frankly, it's not about the money, it's about the execution. And what I believe that the sort of conglomerate can execute now is seriously game changing. I put a post on LinkedIn yesterday with the old iPod ad with the silhouette that actually my wife campaigned when she was working at TBWA in London. And she came back with the poster, and she came back with an iPod. And I picked up the iPod and I put it in my ears. And I listened to, A, the quality was really good, but B, it had about 1,000 songs on it. And I looked at my Walkman, and I think I put my Walkman in the bin, actually, because I didn't need it anymore. And that's kind of, a loose analogy of what I think that this combination has in store. And I, for one, can't start, I can't wait to start working with Todd, because, anyway, that's enough said, I think.
Yeah, so this was what we were talking right before you joined, Nick. We were talking about different commercial aspects of the deal, which obviously you're probably not going to want to comment on right now. But for me personally, the most exciting bit is the product side, because obviously I know Live Dealer, and I know some of your ideas very high level. So I think this is the most exciting thing. But what we were wondering is, whether you think that this will stay Evolution's main competitive advantage, having access to your ideas, or do you think this would also go down the route of licensing and franchise, or is Evolution keeping it for their own?
I think, yeah, I think the ideas in many ways will stay within the group. I mean, there's existing intellectual property like MegaWays, and there will be further intellectual property that comes about that we, potentially will license as a group as well. I mean, I can't speak for Evolution because, we're still, like, even though we're exchange, we're still to close, and once that happens, then, there'll be more. But right now it's about, intellectual property creation. Like that's all my business has ever been about, and it continues to be so. So, and I have some, what I think are very radical ideas for, the bigger picture of online gaming, and a reason why, I think, who was chatting before? Tim, you were talking about the fact that, you've got to go out there, you've got to get 1,000 dealers, you've got to do all this sort of stuff. And there's me sitting in, big time gaming, thinking, if I want to execute this idea, or several ideas that I've had over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, then I've got to go out and do just that, and as appealing as it seems to sort of build a live dealer business, the sort of time to equation, is exponential. So it was a kind of really amazing sort of land on your lap moment when Martin and I met for the first time and started to talk. And we started to talk, and we talked for about 5 hours. And a few meetings were cancelled that day. And that was some time ago. But I think it's just a very interesting fit, our business and Evolution. So yeah.
Nick, question from me. Obviously, for the listeners, in terms of doing such a mega deal like this, excuse the pun, how long did it take for you and Evolution to go through the process from first 5-hour meeting to today's date where the deal's been announced? And what was that process like from your side when you're trying to run a business, but also execute a massive deal like this? What was the process like?
It was steady as she goes, Tim.
But time frame?
Well, pre-COVID,
to make it all come together?
Was pre-COVID was the original talk, and then obviously COVID came and threatened the sort of, it put treacle on it, I guess. But as COVID did with a lot of things apart from online gaming. So yeah, it was a lot of great conversations that led us down a path to the acquisition, and we're wholly delighted. The whole team are, and I think everyone at Evolution is delighted. It's just a great marriage,
Right, Nick, and can you tell us about the reaction of your teams? Because I mean, you have a pretty small team, so it's a very close emotional relationship with each one of your employees. At which point, you told them, and what was their reaction? Do they share your excitement? Do they understand the vision and where you could go together?
Yeah, I mean, what you've got to understand about my team is that they've been like organically grown over 10 years, and we're only just the size of a football team. So that kind of, it's like, Evolution's 10,000 people. We're kind of a football team plus a couple of reserves. So it's kind of like ergonomic scale wise, it's kind of there's a huge difference, but in terms of culture, it's all the same. And that's the factor about a culture of innovation is like true to form at Evolution, and it's certainly true to form with us, and that kind of just it's like the multiple on that is exponential of what we can apply on both sides of the verticals that we operate in. Yeah.
Do you expect anything to change in your normal day's work, or do you expect this to be business as usual, just a lot more deal flow?
I think for me it's business as usual. I'm still CEO of Big Time Gaming, and I report into like Martin pretty much directly, and that's pretty much like I'll still keep running the business and talking with clients and developing products. I mean, I'm not a typical CEO. I'm kind of like on the floor every day. I'm building games. I'm a games guy, so it's like it's kind of probably, if anything, it's going to be an absolute net positive that I've got more time on my hands, not dealing with compliance and not dealing with like all the sort of major like hurdles that you have running an online gaming business. I just have a clear track to just develop, which is my passion and why I'm here in the first place. So I agree. Like I say, net positive on all sides of the equation, whichever way you look at it.
And can we ask you?
Yep.
I just wanted to ask you, because we are very clear about the contribution that Big Time Gaming can make to Evo business in terms of product ideas, innovation, IP, leverage, and sort of that innovation perception value. But I'd be interested to hear from you. Do you think, what can they contribute to your business to make it grow, apart of obviously spreading the IP and so on? Because you don't seem like you've been short of resources, short of funding, whatever. You just decided to keep it small and still make amazing success with it. Do you see something that you can actually benefit for Big Time Gaming specifically from this deal?
Yeah, execution of ideas across many verticals. I mean, it's part of my passion, really. More than anything else, to sort of I'm like I've said previously, I'm super excited to be working with Todd. He's a visionary, and I think when we sit down, we've been sort of loosely chatting about when we do sit down for that first time and just open up Pandora's box, and I kind of get a flutter in my tummy, like when I start thinking about the things that we can basically create. It's magic.
Yeah, agreed.
Good morning, Nick, as well. And first of all, thank you for joining us here this morning on short notice. Really appreciate that, and congratulations as well, obviously. I have a question for you, Nick, as well. You mentioned working with Todd, and we mentioned this here a little bit earlier in the call today before you joined, that obviously Todd is one of the biggest visionaries of the industry. He's very highly regarded in the industry, and on the other hand, so are you as well, Nick. Obviously, very, very highly regarded and seen as a visionary. Now that you two come together, can you talk a little bit more about how do you see that working out? Will you and Todd work on a very close basis together? Are you gonna kind of form a team together, or will you work mostly separate? How do you see this collaboration?
I think it's a question of collab. In the purest form. We'll be working collaboratively on some things, no things, and other things, and many things. It's like I have, I mean, look, I can only speak for myself. I have some intriguing propositions for Todd, and I'm sure Todd has some intriguing propositions for me in terms of his wisdom, in the gaming sphere, and I'm like I say, it's kind of mind blowing. What magic may happen or may not. I don't know. You can't. I've got no crystal ball, but I think it's pretty much 99% pretty good from where I'm standing now, that we can achieve real magic And the thing about, you know, technology, it is magic, you know, like until you can break it apart and understand it. And that's the thing. It's yeah, that you know, the development of products holds so much kind of magic in it that we can weave together and build some incredible stuff. And like I say, I have my ideas, Todd has his ideas. I think the conversions of those two kind of disciplines that we're in will be pretty immense. Yeah.
Bit of a roundabout question for you, Nick. When you were going through the acquisition process, presumably you had a lot of suitors. Was Evolution the first and foremost partner that you would have gone, or were you tempted? And you don't need to give out the names. Were you tempted by any other buyers through the process?
We've always had suitors, you know, since kind of year dot, really, you know, because of my sort of previous history of, you know, NC Media, Orbis, and OpenBet. It's kind of like getting like the sort of attitude of getting early, you know, and acquire something. So it's been ongoing with you know, lots of different, you know, individuals in the marketplace. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of like I guess it was a meeting of minds on the kind of the spectrum of innovation that kind of helped me make my mind up.
Amazing. Thank you, Nick. I have another question, if you don't mind. Here, we're mindful of time as well, Nick. So
Yeah.
you mentioned at the start of the call that you aren't able to stay for too long. Do we have you for a few more minutes? How are you with time in general?
I'll give you, yeah, 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, and then I've got to jump. Yeah.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks for that, Nick. I have one question. You posted in the press release, it was posted that BTG had an EBITDA 2020 of around 30 million euro, which is, you know, in the same league as what NetEnt posted in 2019. However, the organizations are vastly different, with NetEnt obviously 500 plus employees at that time, and on the contrasting side, you only had, like you mentioned, a football teams and a couple of reserves. How were you able to keep your organization so slim while being able to make those kind of profits?
Magic.
In comparison to NetEnt. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Magic is all I can say. So it's just 19-hour days. Yeah, from like, don't get me wrong, I didn't want my team 19 hours. I want my team 9 to 5, and expressed that they had to go home at 5, otherwise it'd be useless, and they did. And they were great because they did. So, you know, a very ordinary sort of 1950s, 1960s work ethic of 9 to 5, go home and enjoy your life. Whereas I worked from 6 a.m. till 11, maybe 12, most days, sometimes weekends too, just to get it done. And I think that's kind of, you know, if you put in double the hours anyone else is putting in, you're going to do pretty well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, Nick, I
Amazing.
can vouch for that, because sometimes it takes me 6 months to get hold of Nick, you know, and we know each other, so I know that he's just super busy. So we let you go. Thanks for coming today. I'm gonna keep chasing you, because I have high hopes that you'll appear on my podcast and we can talk some stories down the memory lane, not necessarily commercials of the deal, but go enjoy your dinner. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks, everyone.
And congrats.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Nick.
Congrats, Nick.
Congratulations.
Good stuff, mate.
Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Awesome.
Oh, yes.
What a fantastic fantastic session today, Karolina. Any comments from you?
No, I'm really happy that he made it. I think it's interesting to hear so close to the deal from the person involved. And yeah, I think we're also forgetting that there's a part of the fact that there is evolution in that group. There is also NetEnt and Red Tiger. So each of these organizations is very different. Each one of them has their unique properties and some innovation value. So we didn't talk about it today, but combining some of the you know, values between the three slot companies is also an interesting avenue. So it's not just one Evo Big Time Gaming. It's Evo Net and Red Tiger and Big Time Gaming innovation value that I guess we didn't mention.
Yes.
The big takeaway from me here, and that was just that last comment, that if you are a founder of a business, it does take 18-hour days, and that's part of the long-term dream, and you must enjoy what you're doing, and you must live, breathe, and dream it, and you must keep working towards your end goal, and you've got to set your goals of where you want to be in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, and work your ass off. And it's great to see such success stories like Nik, incredibly smart bloke, but there he is working his ass off towards that long-term goal, and it sounds like now he wants to work even harder with evolution. Yes. And what the evolution product can open up for the property that Big Time Gaming has. So really well done.
And he really enjoys it. It sounds, by the sound of things, he's really enjoying it. He's looking forward to even more, working more on the stuff he likes most, i.e. not compliance.
I think I would like to be a fly on the wall for when he meets Todd first time in this setting, because I know from some other guys that they have actually come across each other on different events, and I'm sure they were talking a lot during the deal, but they have not been on a night out drinking together. So I think when that first happens and the ideas start flowing, many of us would want to hear this or stream this session. And then another thing I wanted to ask him, but I just didn't want to get his time. I'm interested to know how he felt and how did it go about such a big deal being done remotely, because I don't know if they managed to meet. They are in Sweden, UK, Australia. It's not that easy to organize this travel within COVID, especially from Australia. So, and I know that he believes in making deals in person. That is one of his strong sort of feelings. So this must have been hard.
I can try and help with that, Karolina. Having done quite a lot of deals last year, sadly behind Zoom sessions, it's not easy, particularly when you're the kind of evangelist like Tim, who likes jumping on planes and meeting people over a really good plate of steak. Right? It's a challenge. But again, one thing we've learned from COVID is if you really want to make a deal happen, if you really believe in the product, then you will do what it takes, irrespective of the macro environment. And I think this is what these guys have done with this transaction.
Brilliant. We a little bit today, but I have a last question for the panel as well, which is the fact of what ripple effects this can have to other game studios now, seeing that BTG is being acquired and the game studio side is being more and more consolidated. Do you guys expect that there will be more consolidation now going forward? Will there be more M&As done in this space with the other game studios as well?
Yes.
Let's take the examples of Play and Go, No Limit City. I met Push Gaming yesterday, and they talked about this, that perhaps this is opening up a bigger drive for M&A. What do you guys think?
It's going to happen a lot over the next 9 months. It's already happening, actually. Just can't wait to announce a few more deals in the coming weeks. If anything, this whole consolidation, I think Robert mentioned this, right? All of a sudden, the operators are starting to take more interest in the smaller studios, right? Particularly because of this fear, this FOMO, almost, that we're seeing on missing out on really good assets. So yes, M&A is heating up. It's heating up more, and important, the valuations are being driven up as well. So it's going to be a very interesting bubble growth over the next 9 to 12 months.
From my opinion, I completely agree with that. But there's also another line of thinking here, is that we've now just seen a studio of a football team size actually create a business which is worth potentially 450 million euros. Now, they haven't gone out there and just made slots and just pumped out slots left, right, and centre and tried to do copying of bonus buys and tumbling features and this, that, and the other. They've just simply thought, how do we solve a problem within the slot industry? Because everyone copies everyone. Let's go and build some intellectual property and actually dig into the math pass sheet and make it work, and we can license it. And you know what? I'm not sure the exact commercials, but I believe it's within 1-2% of the GGR. And then a game supplier will push that out as a premium game, and they'll cover that extra margin as well. And all of a sudden, we can now see that you don't need to just pump out slots left, right, and centre. You can actually be very creative and and take to market some kind of licensing fee, nearly on a SaaS model, if you can say that, which can be greatly adopted. And that's another way to build a business within this iGaming industry. So again, people need to think outside the box here and go, right, do I just want to be one of the, I don't know, 200 gaming slot providers out there? And do I do localization? I mean, we talked to an Indian slot provider the other day that they're making their games in, I think, 8 or 10 native Indian languages, be it Urdu or Hindi or Tamil, and that was their key USP going to market. But actually, there's another spectrum here that you can create intellectual property and build a very, very, very successful business. So it opens up thinking outside the box as the iGaming industry evolves and matures.
Yeah, I just wanted to add from my perspective that there is another day that goes by that someone doesn't ask me about some studios to buy. So there is definitely a big demand from the market space and not enough studios that people can buy. And I would be interested to see how this deal impacts the valuations of both studios and some aggregation platforms, because from one perspective, it could lower the valuations because the multiplier is lower here than we've seen on previous deals, where a lot of people started referring to those deals, setting a standard. This is lower. And at the same time, I think it made it very visible how cost efficiently this studio was operating as opposed to many other businesses out there. So I think it sets expectation from some buyers going, well, wait a minute, you wanted X amount of money with that multiplier, but you're operating at a 3 times the cost base of
100%.
BTG, you know?
100%. And I just want to add on this, there's a lot of distortion in the market right now with regards to actually what valuation is and importantly what earnouts are. And big time gaming acquisition is a classic textbook case of that. So I wholeheartedly agree with you, Karolina. There might be what I call a PR exercise, an increase in valuations, but as with always, the devil's in the details of what actually is going on.
Brilliant, guys. Thank you so much for today. This is just goes to show the absolute brilliant power of Clubhouse, being able to get Nik in here on short notice, giving his comments and so on and so forth. And special thank you to Karolina for organizing this. I know that you've been on Nik for the last couple of days to try to get Nik into the room today. So just absolutely amazing to have the first comments from Nik, and really exciting that we get to do this live together. So big thank you to you, Karolina. Amazing work to make that happen.
No worries. I wanted to be the one to hear his comments first as well. I'm genuinely super happy with him. You know, I saw the games early on when Nik was showcasing them himself at IGB conference with big set of speakers. I'm really hoping he comes on a podcast to tell those stories. But I'm genuinely thrilled for him and super excited about Live Dealer because it is an area of my specialty. So I can very clearly see what can happen in that space.
Absolutely, and the podcast with you and Nik would be amazing. And then I think the next step as well is to get Todd and Nik together on a podcast. That would be pretty cool as well. Aim for the stars and reach the moon. Who knows what will happen, but we'll do our best. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today for the iGaming Next breakfast chat here on Clubhouse. It's been an absolutely fantastic session. And today is actually the first session that we are recording as well. So we'll see a little bit here afterwards how we're going to release this. But I guess we have to ask for Nick's permission and see so that he is okay with us releasing this session. But in any case, it's been great to have everyone here today. It's been a record-breaking room today. More and more people are joining us every week. So that's nice to see, of course. And to my co-moderators, Karolina, Nico, thank you so much for helping me out today and for organizing this room together. Julian, thank you so much for coming on as a guest speaker. And Tim, like always, my man, nice to have you here. And with that, I wish you all a nice day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.